of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now, it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio. Anywhere sound is found on the Internet. We are around on the Internet making sound and letting you know how important it is to end prohibition. Don't forget, when you go to timeforhemp.com, we are a group of people dedicated to ending prohibition. We are a growing group. Get it? Arc. And we have lots of free archives you can download. Just check out your favorite host, and you can click on their bio page. And on the bio pages, you will find their archives, where you can check out all their past programmings, download them, and share them for free. Also, we have a newsletter. We're growing marijuana live on the site. And you can also listen to our 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week, all cannabis, all the time broadcasting network that goes to you from iHeartRadio and watches on Roku TV. I apologize for the shameless plug. We have to do that once in a while here at the big broadcast to remind people why it is so important to support the hard work we do. With that said, one of the people who does support the hard work we do is Darryl Cotton from Indigo. Good morning, Darryl.
Good morning, Casper. How are you?
Fine, and I apologize again for taking time to do a shameless plug. I don't normally do that, but I just...
Hey, got to pay the bills.
That, and we updated the website. Now we've got it so that when you start...
the site looks great.
Well, when you start poking around in it, too, it loads in fast. So if you go to the home page, you start springing off to different pages that you didn't know were there. So,
and the archived shows can be found there?
Absolutely. Yeah,
we've got some great shows in your repertoire here, so I'd encourage anybody listening to just go back and look at some of the interviews that Casper's done over, 20 years?
25.
Wow,
25
congratulations.
Years. This is my silver anniversary doing Time for Hemp. I became an activist 25 and a half years ago when Jack Hare talked me into taking over his office and running it while he was on the road promoting his little book you might have heard of called The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Oh, yes. So who are some of your favorite interviews?
Well, of course, Willie Nelson was a fun interview, and Tommy Chong rocked, and Dr. Tim Leary, I enjoyed sitting around getting high with him. But those were videos, and I've also enjoyed learning from Elvia Maseka, who's one of the patients that the government gives medical marijuana to, as well as Irv Rosenfeld.
I think I was on that show.
Well, they've been reoccurring guests, and they are just a wealth of knowledge. And I've also enjoyed learning from Norm Stamper from LEAP organization. And, of course, there's been a large...
How about the governor of Kentucky, or he was running for governor?
Oh, no. Norm Stamper was a former, I think, sheriff up in Seattle. Gateway Galbraith was one of my mentors.
That's the one. Oh, my word. What a colorful character he was.
He was. And he's the one who talked me into doing the Time for Hemp podcast. I had given up on doing anything Time for Hemp back in the day. And Gatewood said, you'd be surprised, Casper, how many people tune in to podcasts on the Internet.
Yep.
And he paid for the first 10 interviews to be done because I just didn't even believe anybody would be interested in even listening to a show called Time for Hemp after all those years. And golly, within the first 5 segments, we had 2,000 people tuning in, and it was surprising how many people were hungry for the truth. Which brings us to today's show. Darryl, you have an amazing guest
I do.
For us to learn from. And I'm going to hush up my mouth and let my joint host bring on our joint guest in this big joint broadcast on Time for Hemp. Darryl?
Well, thank you again for having me on. And my guest today is Tod Browning. Tod Browning is an ambassador for our 151 Farms, and this will be the first time I've had a chance to interview him and let your audience know a little bit about what it is 151 Farms does and what Tod does for that effort. Tod, good morning.
Good morning. How are you all?
Oh, we're doing good. How are you?
Going great. Casper, it's great. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always good to be around fellow cannabis entrepreneurs.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is what we're going to talk about today is one of the things that Jack and I realized a long time ago. We used to sit around in his office getting high on break and talk about how many jobs could be created by introducing this cash crop back into our economy, and how many products could be created here at home by reintroducing this cash crop back into our economy. And everybody so much oftentimes focuses on the medical aspect of it, and this wonderful aspect of economy growing hemp sometimes gets overlooked. So to have you come on and to discuss some of these things is really exciting.
It is.
You know, I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm really excited about 151. I mean, it brings a whole new perspective once you really kind of sit back and look at how we can impact our local community, and through that impact, we can, be able to educate people about the advantages of sharing and dovetailing other things into what you do in your cannabis business. And 151, I mean, Darryl is just, I can't tell the audience enough about Darryl, because let me tell you, just a quick trip to Darryl's office and location will send you home, and your brain won't shut off till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with the possibilities. Because once you sit and you really look at it and you really kind of examine how incorporating different crops within your grow allows you to be able to feed your community along with providing medicine for your community or recreational buds for your community. And now I've become a proponent of really understanding what goes into my cannabis or my fruits or my vegetables, because we buy a lot of things off the shelf and we're really not sure how they're grown or what's, the process that they go through. But with 151 and being able to incorporate the aquaponics, you know exactly what's going into your plants. Yep. And you end up getting you get a product that's clean. And I have you by about 15 years with experience. I mean, I go back 45 years with this plant, and I can remember times getting product in the 70s and the 80s. You would have to leave out and let it air out because there were so many chemicals that had been put into it. And we didn't even think about it at the time. But now as an older person, an older consumer, and being a little bit more aware of what I'm putting and adjusting into my body, I really want to stop and, think about what I'm buying when I'm in a dispensary. That's the first thing I ask.
Well, that's a very good point that you raise, and then we're seeing that with concentrates too. So before I get into all the downsides of what we're seeing, the way cannabis can be grown, and then how eventually it ends up in our body, I just want to tell people that 151 stands for a pound of cannabis for 5 pounds of food for one community. 151. It's not just a rum anymore. And we kind of coined this because we were looking for a way to get a handle on what it is we do. We have aquaculture gardens where the fish supply the macronutrients to the plants, and it's a recirculating system of water, so it's only using 5% of the water over a traditional soils garden. And there's some adjustments you have to make because it is high nitrogen, but the leafy greens are just flawless. I mean, if you want to incorporate leafy greens into your gardens, all the greens that we grow, we give to charity. It's considered community-supported agriculture, but we call it cannabis-supported agriculture because cannabis helps pay for it. And we're able to then give those leafy greens to those that, might have to have a sliding scale of what they can pay, or it's just a straight donation. And it's kind of rewarding to do that when you can. There's also plenty of food for our group here and, the people that come through and do our tours and so on. But with the cannabis, we're looking at ways to take a pure product to extraction. So to those people that have to have, for medical needs, 100 milligrams of a specific THC to CBD ratio, then, we owe it to them to be able to do that without incorporating insecticides, fungicides, and pesticides. If you put any of those things onto that plant and it gets to the fish, it'll kill them. So your fish are sort of the canary in the coal mine. But what we've done is we've needed ambassadors, mature people, business people. They're well-spoken, they're clear-headed, and they get into city council meetings, for example. And we've always had, historically, pushback with medical marijuana and recreational, more so recreational. But with the medical marijuana and the dispensaries and this infrastructure that's getting built, we see new laws or at least initiatives being offered that would make recreational legal, and these cities got to take notice of that. So, well, right. I am not necessarily one to approve this particular bill. I want to bring that out, Todd. I mean, what have you been experiencing? You've been to various cities. Do some embrace you and welcome you with open arms and want this information, or do others just kind of no matter what, we're not doing this?
Well, let me take you back just like to the process, the evolutionary process, just over the last 3 years has just been astounding. 3 years ago, when I really kind of refocused my energies about trying to really look at the business of cannabis, as I started to do my research, because I'm really kind of one of those people who really kind of want to know what it is I'm talking about. So I reached out, I got onto the internet, and I really started to look to see what was out there, what was going on. And there were people that were doing things that were incredible, that were bringing people together and having conversations. And then at the same time, you also saw the other side coming out and having their conversations and the same old, anti-cannabis, prohibition arguments that have been, we've all heard over the last 45 years. And so, and just in the last 6 months in California, I'll speak about California, it's the transition from zero cannabis policies, we don't want to have anything to do with it, to, well, maybe we ought to re-examine that, has been lightning speed also. So when the governor signed the Medical Marijuana Cannabis Act, and it took effect in January, there was a push from some super PACs. I don't want to say any names, but we kind of go look it up if you really want to know who's pushing that agenda. And they wrongly let the cities and counties know that if they didn't act within a certain time frame by March 31st and ban cannabis activities in their community, they would lose that opportunity. So you saw a significant majority of communities throughout California just ban it outright without a process that we could go through and educate. But now they're seeing that, the new Proposition 64 on the ballot looks like it's going to move forward. They're really seeing economic opportunities. And there are some cities that again, up in the Central Valley that I'll talk about, that are on the west side of the valley that have been hit hard by the drought and the fact that they haven't had any new industry in their communities over the last 5 or 10 years, are really starting to embrace, maybe we ought to really look at this and try to figure out a way how we can incorporate things. So 6 months ago, when I was talking to city planners in these local communities, it's like, nope, we don't even want to talk about it. And so as I started to break down the argument and what their objections were, most of them were talking about dispensaries. And that's when I had to even stop to educate them. And they really weren't even aware of what was in the new medical marijuana laws. So there are going to be 11 different kinds of licenses.
But this is a problem. I mean, here you got these people making policy, and they don't even understand the industry.
You're exactly right. And, honestly, that when you say understanding the industry, we can kind of pinpoint that throughout what's even going on with the state and them setting up their own industries. I don't see anybody on their boards, or not their boards, but to their staff, that come from the cannabis industry. I see people coming over from the alcohol industry, but don't get me wrong, there are some great people that are on that, but there hasn't really been an embracing it of anybody who actually has been dirty and who has the dirt under their fingernails from actually growing, or actually owning a dispensary, actually touching the plant. So I think you're going to have an education process. But fortunately, right now, with the education process, what's pushing the door open is the economic opportunities from the taxation. And I can tell you that I won't tell you the exact city, but I sat in a planning commission meeting about 5 months ago, and it was no. And then this gentleman got up from Los Angeles and made a proposal about buying a really significant piece of real estate within this city that they haven't been able to sell for the last 5 years, and they were going to do cannabis, and he started talking about the economic impact and the money that they're going to bring in the community. And the council, who was also the city council, just actually kind of started to really pay attention. And this one lady in particular took her glasses off, shook her head, and asked this gentleman to repeat what he had just said about the economic impact on this one community that he was referencing in the Southern California area. to where they'd raised, I think, close to $5 or $6 million just in fees. Just in fees from people who want to come in and get a building permit. And this lady says, well, wait a minute, that's more than our whole general fund. Maybe we ought to look at this again. And and you just saw everyone completely change their whole posture, their demeanor, and they embraced it. So whatever it took to get, the conversation started, and they're moving forward, and there will be a ballot initiative on their local elections in November, and this community is going to step in and really embrace cannabis, and it'll be interesting to watch the economic impact and how it really kind of impacts this local community.
And I would agree, and I think this is a long time coming, but I also look at it from the standpoint, be careful what you wish for, because if all of a sudden there's going to be these wholesale changes, and with the flip of a switch, everything's going to be okie-dokie at a state level,
right.
And you have these massive infrastructures and agencies that have to be put into place with many of the standards not even established. From my own personal standpoint, my belief is that we're rushing to this. I think with our medical marijuana laws that are already in place and due to be enforced as of January 2018, what we need to do is make sure that works good, because there is a really distinct difference between the medical patient and the recreational patient. And if we look at other states like Washington, for example, you can see where the medical patients have pretty much been given a short shift. They're not even, for what it's worth, everybody's going to recreational. You can't hardly find any CBD strains, and the patients feel, like they've been sort of forgotten.
Well, I think
Casper,
that same argument was...
Casper, you would see that too, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
do
agree.
I mean, we only have to look at what's happening in our neighboring states, and every state is wrestling with this, and it's because of the tax money that they expect to get. It's a $50 billion a year industry. We can't lose sight of that, but you're also going to throw the growers and the people that have forced the issue to make sure that the patients were taken care of up until such time that it was recognized as a legal enterprise. So I just say, a little bit of caution's to be advised here, and I'm a big advocate of people reading AUMA, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, and coming to your own conclusions. Don't take sound bites and try to make a short, casual observation of a very complex bill and decide, this is right for us and our future generations. But I didn't mean to get too far off onto that, Todd. What I'm more interested...
I think if you look at, not to jump in, but if you just look at the parallels between prohibition and alcohol and prohibition with cannabis, when they flipped the switch for prohibition with alcohol, they already had an infrastructure in place.
They did.
They'd had one before. So they had the trucking system, they had the distribution system, they had the taxation system, they had the government system. So they had a model in place, whereas with cannabis, depending on what state you're on or in, it's like we're shooting from the hip and we're creating it as we go. And I'm not going to get into 64 yay or nay.
No, but you can
let's
see
just
this.
Move forward and let's embrace what we have. And those changes will come about. I mean, you can see the changes just within California just in the last few months. Once they passed the Medical Marijuana Act, they came back and added some other, they added bills. They said, okay, we forgot some things, we're going to add some bills. And so it's going to be an evolutionary process that we're going to be going through. But I think that we've got to at least, step back and really, and you're right about, make a distinction between the two, medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana, and to actually, let's stop the nonsense about there's not research and we don't know a lot of it. So let us research it. Drop it down to a Schedule II drug. Let us get the testing and the things let's put an infrastructure in place when you're growing medical marijuana for patients. So you get a product that looks like Tylenol, acts like Tylenol, and is, clean like Tylenol. Right now, we don't have any of that.
Well, why then, in your opinion, won't the Fed reschedule or deschedule it?
It's political. Because look, but it goes back to, you got to change, the narrative, because the narrative since 1968 or so with Richard Nixon has been, that it's a gateway drug. It's drugs are bad. And so, having to change that whole narrative and then actually, once you change the narrative, then you also have to have the conversation, okay, so what are we going to do about the people that are in prison, that have been in prison for marijuana-related offenses? How do we deal with that issue? I mean,
well,
and it was interesting.
Those, by the way, those laws have already been relaxed.
Right, but I mean, if you talk about Schedule 1, Schedule 2, there's more than just making a change. So, I mean, and then having to, and then you're going up against long-term entrenched bureaucrats who make a lot of money off asset forfeitures, who make a lot of money off of, the paranoia of the drug cartels. I mean, that's a whole another economic issue in itself. So, I mean, I think it's at least we're having a conversation.
Before you go in front of one of these city councils, though, I mean, you're providing them a lot of information as to why they should be considering cannabis.
Let me tell you how we do it.
But what is the one thing that everybody always runs head on to right now in California?
Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you a classic story.
It's water.
Well, yeah, but it's taken out the word cannabis. If we can all agree to say, let's take that word out of the conversation. Let's just take it and call it widget. Okay? We got a widget industry right now in California that's worth $11 billion. It's the single largest agricultural product in California. It surpasses grapes, cotton, name it. I mean, we can no longer just turn our backs to it. But at the same time, you're right. Water is a serious issue. Runoff is a serious issue. But that goes back to putting an infrastructure in place so people all know exactly how to grow. People all know exactly how to water. We all know what it is we're putting in the plant. Where's the water coming from? How are we recycling the water? I mean, water is just not for cannabis, but water is a key issue for the whole state of California. And I think, reaching out and being creative, like, again, you and I put our heads together and said, hey, how can we go find water? And it took us about 2 weeks, and we came up with a solution. And that in itself was a classic entrepreneurial case management study. We had an issue. We know that this issue is going to be ongoing, and what we did was we identified someone who also had an issue with what he was going to do with his runoff water. And we came together, we made a marriage. It made sense. And so we'll be able to offer water for farmers at a reasonable rate, and it's either, there are actually two types. You can get the pure aqua, the aqua water, or you can get the water that's high in fish nutrients. So I think it's an opportunity, and again, surrounding Canada is just an opportunity, and more entrepreneurial opportunities to fall out of this industry every day.
Well, that's the only reason I would say we have to be careful that we don't stymie the opportunities that would come from innovation. And one of the reasons that 151 was launched was because we wanted to expand our narrative to include food crops too, and non-GMO and farm to fork and all these concepts that are near and dear to me. But now I see with the advent of water restrictions, and most of these licenses will, if not all, will require an environmental impact report prior to getting the license. So you'll have to be signed off by whatever water authority is going to decide that you could have the license. So I don't care how much money you have.
And what I heard last week, and I don't know if it's, because how rumors run rampant.
It's in the bill.
The feds have come out and said if you get any part of your water from us, you're not allowed to let that water be used for cultivated cannabis because it's a Schedule I drug.
Well, so they said that in the past.
Seriously?
They've said that in the past. Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's been said. Matter of fact, there was an Indian tribe in Northern California that just got denied water after having asserted under the Cole Memo their sovereign rights, and they had a cannabis plant farm going. And the DEA had, I don't remember what agency it was, but they denied them water to the crop. So by denying water, you essentially, exercise your authority.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You're done. Yeah, you just killed them economically. I mean, that's the end of the conversation.
Which also under AMA, you'll have a surety bond on your crop. So to all you farmers that are used to, growing and, you might suffer a loss, but that's between you and your crop. This will be between you and the state, because if you do lose that crop, the surety's going to step in and pay for it.
Well, and that's a whole other interesting industry. I've been looking for insurance people for the last 6 months to write liability insurance. And the companies that were writing in Colorado have decided they're not writing anymore. So, in order for you to even go through the process of applying for a license for a city or a county, those are things that you have to have. You got to have workers' comp, you have to have unemployment insurance, you have to have liability insurance, and you have to operate just like a business. So where are all these things? Where are all these people?
And it's a whole infrastructure that's not in place yet.
Right. And you're trying to, so going back to what you were saying about education, so that's the thing, and I would like to say, and I would like to have the opportunity to have conversations with these counties and these cities that haven't had any economic activity over the last few years, that they're stymied, that their younger population is leaving the cities. Once they finish school, they're gone. They're going to the big city to find a job, to say, hey, you know what, wait a minute. Here is an economic opportunity. And you know what, here's how 151 can really impact your community. Yeah, let cannabis pay for all these other things, but you know what, we're going to provide you with access to the other crops that we grow out of this at either a reduced rate or through a donation.
Well,
I heard the other day,
there's alternative industries. I mean, the hop industry, for example, for all your local microbreweries. I mean, we grow.
Don't get me started on that one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, I was researching that just the other day. Another economic opportunity. There's a hop company, because hops are huge. Craft beer in California is like blowing up. And
so when you and I met, this gave you a chance to see some of my vision, but you packaged it into what these people need to hear. And how are you being received? I mean, the cities aren't saying no.
That's an interesting question. Well, they're not saying no, and they're not saying yes, and everybody's waiting until November. Mm-hmm. So, but now, I mean, I'm seeing where January, February, March, and April was kind of like this, for me, the cold, I call that the cold era, because it was all about doing the research. Casper, I got a hold of people in Colorado and people in Washington, and actually down into the local level, and was talking to local communities about, what's the significant impact? I mean, tell me, and they hadn't really actually, the studies are done by universities, and they're just now coming around to do those studies. But when you get to the local guys, you talk about the secondary impact in the local community. So there was a community up in Washington that, was ready to close its doors. I mean, they couldn't even afford to pay the guys to mow their lawns for the city. And through cannabis, just in 6 months' time frame, they're seeing the secondary impact from people having jobs that are paying like $20, $25 an hour with full benefits. They're spending money in the community. There's a housing shortage. They don't have enough, housing for the people there, so there's a construction boom going on. People are spending money in the community, and they're bringing the community back again. And I said, so do you know what those numbers are? He goes, no, I can't tell you what those numbers are, but what I can tell you is our building permit process is up. Our commercial building permit process is up. We got people that are moving in and bringing the secondaries of the stores, the specialty stores, the things that are needed for that surround the cannabis industry, and it's booming. And there are stories like that all over Colorado, but no one talks about those things. They talk about $7 billion was raised in tax revenue. Okay, cool. How much was raised at the local level? How many people went to work? What's the average salary that people are making? And you're going to find out within the cannabis industry, we pay well. We pay really well.
Well, I hope that's true, because I'm looking for new sponsors for this broadcasting network to keep us strong and loud and proud. So if you're out there,
let's do some more shameless sponsors for you. Hell yeah! You know what? We need to start supporting people like you too with our money. We need to step up and say, you know what? Here's some cash. We like what it is you're doing. Thank you very much. And you know what? If you want to give us a shameless plug for what we do, that's cool too. But you know what? We got to start spending money on the companies and the people like yourselves. We got to start spending money to politically organize and start registering voters, because that's the power. You know what the real power is? When I go to a city council and say, you know what? I know last year, for example, Madam City Council person, you were elected by 45 people. We have 700 registered voters that we can actually sway to vote whichever way we want them to vote, because they believe in what it is we're doing. That's power. You know what I mean? Economics is power too, but voting, registration, that's huge power. And as we educate and we become more and more mature in our industry, those are things that we'll all have to do. And it goes back, and then, 151 is about that too. We're not just about, we are about food processing things, but we're also about, educating people and saying to them, if you need an answer, if we don't know it, we'll find somebody who does know it.
And I do want to remind people that there is a donate button on the timeforhemp.com website. We're going to take a commercial break now and help pay some of our bills. Then we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic cannabis is. And then when we get back, we're going to pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
The world is talking about it. I will tell them about it. Attitude for tell them about it. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the green gold rush. Medicinal therapeutic potential. My remedy, oh Chaser. Only the close-minded will criticize. There is a big green gold rush. Cannabidiol medical, relative to the ancient botanical remedy. Oh, Chaser. I know the whole world are fight for legalize. They assume when doctor give them pills, it's gonna better for them health. They are only being dishonest to themselves. Take a look, look more them see them insides and melt. Cause them shun out on pharmaceutical help. Natural thing, into my lungs, then to my brain. No doubt about this indica strain. The herbs keep icing. And the herbs grandpa Java when in feel pain. At the green gold rush. Medicinal therapeutic potential. My remedy, oh Chaser. Only the close-minded will criticize. There's gonna be a green gold rush. Cannabidiol medical, relative to the ancient botanical remedy. Oh Chaser. I know the whole world are fight for legalize. That's why me they use them alcohol to end my miserable days. Ganja feel my spirit and my mind always. Leave all my worries and problems behind. The powers of the herb is divine. We're blazing cushion, releasing love. Come make me take you to a place far up above. A place where all your problems fade away. In the ganja field we laugh and smile all day. Yes, there is a green gold rush. Medicinal therapeutic potential. My remedy, oh Chaser. Only the close-minded will criticize. There's gonna be a green gold rush. Cannabidiol medical, relative to the ancient botanical remedy. Oh Chaser. I know the whole world a fight for legalize. It's our life and we should make our own choices. Babylon only there to suppress the people's voices. Politics and logics had major flaws in it. When will they admit that some bad laws them new way? Now the herbalists them run come try penalize. Cause we and them crooked friend now socialize. Sooner than later they must realize the only choice is to legalize. And it will bring a green gold rush. Medicinal therapeutic potential. My remedy, oh Chaser. Only the close-minded shall criticize. There is a big green gold rush. Cannabidiol medical, relative to the ancient botanical remedy. Oh Chaser. I know the whole world a fight for legalize. California legalize it, Colorado legalize it, yes, DC legalize it, but Virginia still a fight it. Places like St. Croix, Jamaica and Morocco need it. For the Queen, them must against her, we are breed it. California legalize it, Colorado legalize it, yes, DC legalize it, but Virginia still a fight it. Places like St. Croix, Jamaica and Morocco need it.
That was Green Gold Rush here on the Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network. And I do want to remind you that we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Come to our website. Find your favorite app, iTunes, iHeart, Tumblr, SoundCloud, whatever smart app you prefer in your smart devices. We have it so you can take Time for Hemp on the go everywhere and share us with everyone you know. We are having a fantastic conversation about the amazing impact that this cash crop can have. A lot of people don't realize that when cannabis was legal back in the 1930s, a little place called Kentucky was the most wealthiest commonwealth. It wasn't even a state. It was a commonwealth at the time in the nation. And even the center for a lot of cultural and entertainment because of the extra money that was flowing in and out of their coffers. And when they outlawed this plant, within 14 months, their economy dropped. And within 3 years, it was the poorest commonwealth in the nation. That is the impact this plant can have in any one small community. Isn't that right, gentlemen?
It is right. I mean, you just have to look back. History, you don't want it to repeat itself.
So true, so true. And you want to give everybody that shot that has an idea. I used to do SBA counseling, and people would come through the doors to get help to do legitimate businesses. But that's not available for you now if you wanted to go in to get SBA counseling to help you with a business plan because you want to do a cannabis-related product. Whether or not you're going to touch the plant, you could just be doing something else, but they won't help you. So it's like, where do people turn to so that they come in and say, okay, we want you to operate like a real business? It's like, okay, well, where are the resources to help me do that? And that was one of the things we saw at 151 that was needed. And when, again, we put our heads together and we come up with a pretty good plan, we think, to help people who actually want to get in the business with a cafeteria program that you could come in and pick and choose what it is you need from people that are actually have the experience for what it is you need. If you need grower experience, we have growers. We have growers that have been master growers. If you need financial experience or you need financial resources, we have access to that. You need a location finder, we have access to that. You need an attorney, we've got some great attorneys, real attorneys who know exactly what the laws are. When you go in, go ahead.
And you're also bringing in people that are hard to employ, the veterans, for example. A lot of these people will come back and they might have a PTSD condition or something else that would, make it a little difficult for them to get into a high-stress job sometimes where, they might have these recurring nightmares and mental effects. That gardening really does lend itself to their recovery. And I hear that all the time. So we even have places for the homeless here because once we're inviting somebody in to help with us, as long as they're willing to put in the work, they have a place to stay. So I really do feel that now is the time to expand our narrative to include, some of the social economic things that we really need in our inner cities and try to keep these kids from leaving and going into the big cities. There's reasons that we can have, noted parts of the Californias like Humboldt or Emerald, where people will want to stay there because of the cannabis business. But that's not to say we can't do the same thing in other parts of the state. One of the places that I would bring up right now is Coachella. What have you found out there in the desert in terms of water availability?
Incredible. Yeah, water. There's no infrastructure there. I went to a meeting. Again, I don't want to throw any specific city under the bus, but I went to a meeting, right? So I drive 3 hours to go to this meeting because they're set, they're ready to go. We're going to take your money. Sat through this meeting for 90 minutes, and I raised my hand. I was like, so where are the locations? So they gave me the locations, put them in my GPS, drove over there, and it was literally just barren desert land. Mm-hmm. So I got the guy back on the phone. I was like, excuse me, but where's the streets? Where's the power? Where's the water? Where's the sewers? Oh, well, that's not in place yet. I said, but you just told me in this meeting that the city doesn't have any money to put this all in place, so what are we doing here? Well, we're taking your money because this will happen down the road. So I understand that and I applaud them for being, proactive and inviting us to the table. But, don't tell us that we're going to have to put all this money up and we've got to wait 3 years for you to put an infrastructure in place. Or, let's partner and let us put our money in place to help you get that infrastructure in place. But again, can't even, I applaud them for being proactive, but it was such a joke when you sat down and really looked at it, put the numbers together, that you're, close to $750,000 before you even open the door.
Well, here we are today. What happens tomorrow in the new cannabis world? Where do you see cities fighting for these businesses?
My hope would be that we have an intelligent conversation once the election's over, and if I could have my crystal ball, 64 passes, because that now puts power in our hands, because the voters have said in California, yes, this is what we're going to do. So then you have the conversation with these cities and these counties that have been dragging their feet to say, okay, look, the population said yes, okay? So we're going to sit down and we're going to come up with a plan, and it's happening right now. I've an attorney friend that's up in El Toro who worked with a local city in the Los Angeles area, and they came up with a very good regulation within 90 days, and they're implementing, and they've implemented so well that, in fact, they're not even taking any more applications, because once they open the process up, the lady told me at the desk that she was overwhelmed. Within 2 days, they had like 5,000 phone calls. And so that power for that small little community is going to be huge, and I want to have this conversation. Darryl, you and I, we both live in San Diego, and which is funny is because a year and a half ago, San Diego was no ifs, ands, nor buts are we going to embrace the cannabis movement. Well, what happened? They put together, some petitions, and they forced the city to come back to the table through the political process. The city came back and said, okay, well, you know what, we're going to put this dispensary ordinance in place. And so they, at least made an attempt to get some licensed dispensaries in place. But no one had the conversation about, okay, what are we going to do with cultivation?
That's right.
And they just kind of look at you like, what? We don't even want to tackle that right now.
Well,
where do you think it comes from? Do you think the little green fairies show up in the middle of the night and fill the jars up? So if we can't grow legally, what are we going to continue to do? Are we going to have to hide in the shadows? And quite frankly, honestly, I'm tired of hiding in the shadows. Yes. I'm tired of making excuses. You know what? Because if they've discovered that plant today in the Amazon forest, and we didn't know anything about cannabis, they would call it the wonder drug.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get past all this nonsense about, well, we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. We don't want to market to our kids. I don't want to market to kids. I'm not. I'm a responsible adult. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying let's embrace it. Let's come up with. Let's take the cannabis word of marijuana just out of the conversation.
Before we jump with both feet into that water, just remember, for the last 80 years, the government, and I just use that colloquially. This is the government as a whole, because you've had the Fed, you've had the state, you've had cities locking people up for growing a plant. It's disrupted lives, it's disrupted families, it's disrupted careers, and now we're having a new conversation with that same government. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. With those same bureaucrats who, you know what, once they have those jobs, they're not leaving.
Right. And
that
now
in itself is a problem.
That's right. So let's just think about what we do before we jump in with both feet. That's all. I mean, I like where you're heading. I see the benefits under 215. I see the benefits under medical. I see all of these things happening under medical while you figure out what you're going to do for recreational. But I think when the cities come out there, make you drive 3 hours and say, oh, we didn't tell you, we don't have any of the infrastructure in place.
Exactly.
They're just jerking your chain. And they're doing that because they think the cannabis market has so much money that they'll make it happen regardless.
That's the other thing. I mean, they assume that we have obscene, which is really kind of funny, because they assume we have these obscene amounts of money to be able to pay for these fees, correct?
Right.
But then when you just kind of look at them and say, and I'll give you a classic, Casper, you're going to love this. So my friend in Colorado gets an MIP license, right? And he's got to pay, I think the number was like $400,000 up front, right? So he's prepared. He's got everything together. So he goes down to pay it in cash. They won't take the cash. I said, how in the heck did you get that? He goes, I hired a security company who put this in a locked chest, and we, with a dolly, hauled it up the stairs, took it into the office where we had to pay our fees, and they about had a heart attack. And I said, that's an interesting dilemma, because we don't even have access to banking.
Right.
So we can't even get our money in the bank. We can't even be able to use the bank, the resources. I mean, if you're someone who's got, $500,000 in cash laying around, and you want to become legal, how are you even going to get that money into the bank so you can make it legal? And they're asking you now to put up, $1.5 million in bonds and those kinds of things. So, where's that money coming from?
Well, those are the questions that have to be asked now, in advance of approving a law that has to take these things into consideration.
Well, yeah, but that's a Washington law, and that bill is actually the CARES Act, which has bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate from Republicans and Democrats. Can't even get out of committee because the committee chairman is such an anti-cannabis crusader, he won't even allow it to have a hearing. And it's been in there for over 11, 12 months. And what they keep telling us is, well, things are changing and, they're having conversations. But again, Darryl, I think it comes back to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. It's the economics now that are driving it.
Definitely.
Like, wait a minute, some of these states are having problems just even covering, the money to pay the bills that they have on the table now, not counting all the people that are retiring and all the money they got to pay in pensions. Maybe we ought to re-examine this. So from my point of view, it's like, whatever it takes to get you to the trough, let's get you to the trough.
No, I disagree.
Let's all drink out of the water.
Before you jump into that bed, remember, you have George Soros and you have Sean Parker. These guys are multimillionaires, if not billionaires, and they're getting behind something without stating specifically and explicitly why it is they're behind it. Right. So when you start looking at this from a Monsanto relationship, and then our hemp fields and how hemp is tied into these bills. Folks, the devil's in the details. Don't take mine or Todd's or Casper's or anybody's word for this. Yeah. Read the initiative and see what's in it. Because I'm telling you, we're going to go forward with medical no matter what. Because
that's already done.
Yes, and these cities are going to embrace that, and under the existing distribution system, which includes dispensaries and physicians given recs and so on, under MRSA, that under there's a trio of bills, 643, 266, and 244, I believe. All three of them were passed. So if you look at them collectively, yes, there are improvements being done along the way. One recently, I don't remember the number, but it added a new license classification for cottage.
1586, I think it is,
the cottage industry.
For craft, the cottage industry.
No, craft, and that's fine. That's all good stuff. But what I would say we must deal with is the ability to negotiate back and forth with the state on recreational and not take this all or nothing, because there's a lot of things I want to see done differently, and one of them is what we do here. I want to have incentives to try to reduce water and bring food and jobs to the community, and the state can communicate that back and forth with some of our groups.
And have that conversation. I mean, you touched on it a few minutes ago about jobs. Yes. Cannabis opportunities have the ability, you can bring anybody in at any educational level within the cannabis industry. Like you said, if they have a drive and a desire to be successful, you don't have to have a PhD to get into the industry, because you can start trimming. You can start by learning, or you can be involved as to the secondary. There's 11 different licenses that are coming out through the Medical Marijuana Act. There's 11 different business opportunities for you to be able to be a part of this industry. And the secondary markets that are going to come out from this are going to also spawn new economic opportunities. So you want to start talking about jobs. You want to start talking about how we can employ people who, that can't get employed anyplace else at a livable wage. And I think that's we being the people that are in the industry, we start to set those standards. We start to say, you know what, you're not making $5 or $10 or $15 an hour. We're going to pay you $20, $25 an hour. But we also want you to be, we want you to be productive. We want you to have the drive and the desire to learn.
Well, let me ask you. You've been to a lot of farms over your life. What makes yours different? What are we doing here at 151 that you gravitated to?
It's the family. You touched on that earlier. You know what? You need a place to stay. You got a place to stay.
But it's
you need, help. Oh, well, geez, it starts with the fish. What I tell people now is I tell people the fish drive everything. I said, if it goes in the fish and it kills the fish, it ain't going in my body.
That's right.
So, you know what I mean? That's the message. That's what we say. And it's like, you know what? You should, as a consumer, start to tell your dispensary people, I don't want buds that's not tested.
Right.
I want to know what's in my process. I want you to tell when your growers come in and they want to drop off their packages, I want to know what's in there. And this was where the MRSA came in. I mean, everything's got to be tested. Everything's got to know. And finally, we've got that in place.
It is in place in MRSA.
And so, and AB 266 was a great bill. I wish it had been passed. It wasn't for whatever reason, but, now they came out of it. And fortunately for us, the person who actually helped write that bill is actually staff now with the new state agency. So, I mean, it was good to see some friendly faces when they came out a few months ago. And I will highly encourage all the listeners, by the way, you need to go onto the website and get tied into them, because they're going out through the state and they really want your feedback. They want they want to hear what you think about how they're going about developing this new infrastructure.
Okay, just a little paperwork correction here. So the 3 bills that were passed, I think you're referring to the AB 19 or House Bill 19, which wasn't passed in 2010. It was shot down. But the 3 bills that were passed that will go into effect as of January 2018 would be Assembly Bill 688, Senate Bill 643, and Assembly Bill 266. So those
what they're doing is they combined all of those, and that's what they use. And that creates, by the way, before we forget, and I think maybe a lot of people don't realize this, but Casper, did you know that Governor Brown actually, when they signed this bill, actually classified cannabis now as an agricultural product in the state of California?
That's right.
Do you realize how big that is? That's huge.
That is,
because that makes us at the table with the grapes, with the cotton, with everything. Because see, now the grapes and cotton people are coming back, and the almond people are going, well, now cannabis is going to suck up all the water. Whoa! Wait a minute. Look, we all need to have a conversation about water, and we all need to start talking about how we can all start really using water more effectively. So don't just all of a sudden say, now you're going to ban us because we're going to start taking too much water. I mean, so it's like, no, we're not the stepchild anymore. We're going to sit at the table and tell you, you know what, we did $11 billion last year. What did you guys do?
Well, I mean, still, it's limited resources. So, and by the way, that AB 2516 is the one Governor Brown signed introduced Type 1C or specialty cottage license.
Yeah,
so that we can expect that. I mean, more developments. But one of the things you can't expect under ALMA is it's going to take a 2/3 majority vote to swing anything, because it is an initiative. And like AB, any of the initiatives, the prior initiatives, must be overridden with the new initiative, and that's what we're seeing with ALMA. So just everybody read the bill. Make sure you understand what you're signing. Don't take a soundbite. MRSA, the Medical Act, I think it has its problems, but I think it's something that we can manage, and we can build an industry around it while we work towards, expanding into these huge, some estimates $50 billion a year just in California, this industry. And one of the things that Todd and I do is run these 151 farms, because they do use recirculating systems of water. We do them on concrete and asphalt. We do them in the inner cities, and we repurpose a lot of inner city buildings with having done this. So we're only using 5% of the water. We're doing an economically and environmentally sound process in doing this, co-cultivating the fish. But obviously, at the end of the day, it's all about the quality of your cannabis, and we have methods that can help you take your cannabis crops through full flower and aquaculture, and that's the exciting thing that Todd and I bring to this.
Well, and actually, to even one step farther, is that my vision would be, I have a piece of property that's right smack dab in the middle of the Central Valley off of Highway 5, located a few miles from Harris Ranch, was just like, if anybody's ever driven I-5, they know where Harris Ranch is. That's where you stop and go to the bathroom and the kids can get something to eat. I would like to turn that into a friendly ecotourism. Yep. I would like for people to be able to stop, come in, and see 151 in action. And by the way, I don't know if you've told Casper, you will be able to log on and watch 151 in action. Any 151 farm we do, you will actually be able to log on, if you're a member of the co-op, and see how the process is going. And that's transparency. And I challenge everybody to start talking about transparency. We really need to make our industry transparent, because that's going to continue to educate and break down the barriers.
Yes.
As people start to get more and more involved in what it is we're doing. Not everybody wants to turn on and see, somebody growing weed. But how many people out there have never even seen a grow house? I remember when I walked into my first industrial grow house in Colorado 3 years ago and saw 5,000 plants growing at one time. I got to tell you, that was pretty impressive. So not only was it that impressive to see that, but to see that this company employs over 200 people that are knocking down a huge economic impact for their city. And everybody was like so positive and so happy. I don't want to call it like a cult, but it was kind of like a cannabis cult. Really, when you walked in, it's like, holy crap, this is what it looks like when it's done right. And it was just like you kind of felt like at home.
So we appreciate you taking the time to tell us what it is you're doing, and the methods and tactics that you're using with these cities. Really, it's fascinating information. Most people don't ever see that side of it, but it's making a difference. And you're getting into open their ears, and it just takes swinging one or two of these council people, and the next thing you know, you got a foot in the door, and you're working your way through.
Well, I need to
and
jump in here.
With you, and I'm going to encourage you, not just your city council people, but you need to find out who your local planning people are, too. Find out, do the research, find out who the people who help make the decisions, and engage them. And most of them want to be involved. They want to be educated because they see the value. So engage them. But you know what? Even before you do that, engage yourself. And so I'm going to do a shameless plug on my behalf. I have a nonprofit. It's called holisticventures.org. And it's a great place for you to go to get started. And it's built as a cannabis community, a kind of a new cannabis community because, it's all about, for us, that site is all about the education. So it was built on the idea that if I had found out that my child had epilepsy, for example, and I needed to go someplace and learn about cannabis, where would I go? And so we created, this Holistic Ventures, and we download probably 40 or 50 articles every week that we get from various sources, and you can go in and take a history lesson, and you can go in and link up with other groups, and it's also linked to 151. And highly encourage you to go to 151 and step in and see what it is we're doing and ask questions, and if you need help, we're here to help you. And like Darryl said earlier,
visit us on Facebook. I mean, we have a lot of our gardens are up there on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And that's fun. That's the fun part when you have the kids come through the gardens, because it's like, wow, we can grow our own food, and we can grow our own food and cannabis pays for it all, even better, and you can provide jobs. So where's the downside on this?
There really isn't. So thank you again very much, and Casper, thanks for having us on.
Always a pleasure.
Casper,
always a pleasure. We learn quite a bit when you and your friends stop by and visit. I want to remind people we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all cannabis all the time. We have a newsletter that we make available to you each month. Lots of free cartoons you can download, videos to be found, free MP3s to share with your friends. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation,
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.